No. Okay. Welcome to this class, 3-day class. You guys, I'm so excited. I used to teach these free numerology trainings several times a year, but in 2024, I only taught it once, which was like a year ago. So to be back teaching it again, to be sharing this with you, I'm super excited. I'm so happy that you're here. Um, Yeah, I just can't wait to dive in. So basically, to kind of give you an overview of what we've got going on, we have a 3-day event. Today, I'm going to be talking a little bit about what is alchemy and transmutation and how you can use numerology to create change. And tomorrow, I'm going to be talking a little bit more about how this applies with clients, whether you're a coach, a healer, a practitioner. I never know what to say as to who numerology is for because it will really serve you regardless as to what your line of work is. If you're in the role of connecting with people, communicating with people, and helping people to be their best, whatever that means to you, right? So, especially if you're helping people overcome things or grow through things, super powerful. So I'm excited to share that with you. And then the last day, I'm going to be sharing a little bit more about how you can use numerology to expand well-being, abundance, financial well-being in your life, in your business. And yeah, so that's what we're covering. I'm so happy you're here. If you can, I'd love to just get a little sense in the chat where you guys are tuning in from and maybe how we got connected. So if you can let me know, have we been connected for a while? I do see some, I don't want to say old faces, familiar faces online. And I see lots of new people as well, which I'm so happy you're here. Ontario, amazing. I'm in British Columbia, Canada, for those of you who didn't know. I live in a town called Kelowna, which is a smallish town. I used to think Kelowna was a small town. It's not anymore because it's like one of the most rapidly growing towns in Canada, if not probably the most rapidly growing town in Canada. Yes. And we've got some other people from Kelowna. Yay. Ontario and Squamish. Wonderful. Yay. And from Anne Marie. That's wonderful. She is a longtime client and friend. I love that. Okay. So let's dive into this a little bit. Um, First of all, setting the context. You're in the right place if number one, you are sensitive to energy. Some of you may or may not recognize that that's what's happening for you, but if you feel like you're a sensitive being, you're in the right place. I'm going to share a little bit about my story, which was definitely the pathway that got me into numerology was around my sensitivity. Ooh, Australia. Oh my gosh, is it like the middle of the night for you? I feel like I don't even know. It's probably tomorrow or something. Time zones are wonky for me. Amazing. Okay, Whidbey Island. Yes. Oh my gosh, I love it. Okay. Oh, it's 8 a.m. on Thursday. So yeah, it is tomorrow. So you're speaking to us from the future. I love it. So wild. Okay. You might already have structures to help people. So numerology is such a powerful tool if you already have structures to help people, but maybe you feel like it's not enough depth. It's not profound enough. It feels a little kind of like surface level, like if you've got a coaching tool or modality or like a process you walk people through, and it's like we always go through the same step process, but like feels a little shallow. Okay. This is going to help you. And if you are here because you want to strengthen your ability with your intuition and to connect with the unseen, whatever that means to you, right? The quantum realm, universal energy, these are terms that are thrown around a lot. I like to think that I'm good at demystifying what that means. So if I'm using a term and you're like, English, please tell me, and I will translate it to basic communication because I think, there's so many people who throw around terms like that and it can be daunting and overwhelming to make sense of it. And at the end of the day, in my opinion, if it's not something that you can practically integrate into your day-to-day life, what's the point, right? Like we want this to be real, usable, and practical. Okay. You will ideally get better, more consistent, reliable results with your clients and you actually want to go deep. Okay. So, what we're going to talk about today, we're going to dive into the numerology. This is not really for you if it's about the quick fix for you and if you're kind of looking for the cookie cutter approach. And if you're not available for the magic of the universe, it's not gonna work for you because we're gonna talk about all the magic today. But practically speaking, right, from an energetic standpoint, practical and tangible standpoint. So I'm going to teach you these really practical tools at the end of the day, for the next 3 days. And I'm going to do some prizes at the end because I love prizes. So most of you, did you guys get your bingo card? I sent out a bingo card in the email. Okay, good. So play your bingo card. Once you have a bingo line, text it to me or email it to me or whatever is the best way, and I'll enter you into the draw for some prizes. I'm still figuring out what I want to give away. I might give away a reading. I might give away some of my favorite tools so I can like mail you something in the mail, which is kind of fun to get actual mail, right? So we'll see how that goes. So if you have anything you're like, oh, I wish you'd give away this, feel free to DM me and let me know. Okay. So my story. Let me share a little bit about my backstory. First of all, I'm not one of those people who always knew she was intuitive. You know, when you hear those stories, you're like, when I was 7 years old, I used to, whatever. That was not me. I have a daughter who's like that, but that was not me. I was very practical, very tangible, very grounded. And in fact, my first love when it comes to like the work I do now was money. When I was a kid, I was like, ooh, I love money. The more I can make, the more I can get, the more I can understand it. That is what I want in my life. And I was one of those kids that had like multiple jobs by the time I was 12. I did door-to-door direct sales in like 1992, like when nobody even knew what direct sales was, I don't think, or it was like the advent of it. Um, but I was obsessed with business and numbers and money. And so I went on to university. I studied business. I got a business degree and a master's degree in economics. And I was always very logical, analytical, math based, right? And when I finished my master's degree in econ, I went on to do forecasting for the provincial government. I worked for the government of Alberta, and my job was to look at like tables of data and spreadsheets and look for what is the relationship between the numbers and how can we use this data to predict revenue for them to budget with, right? That was my job as an economist. And at this time, I got pregnant with my oldest daughter, and that's when I had my spiritual awakening moment, right? So I don't know if some of you guys are moms here, you might have kind of had some of those things that crazy things happen when, the baby comes into your life, and it's like, well, no wonder your identity is being challenged. All the things you think you might know or all the priorities you've had get shifted upside down. So usually when things like that happen, whether it's a baby or a career change or a relationship change, we start to really question what we know that's real and true and where are those gaps. So I actually left my corporate position, moved back to my hometown of Kelowna because I wanted to raise my child here, and I started coaching, business coaching. Okay. Again, I'm the econ girl. I'm like, I got all this like business stuff. This will be great. Well, at the same time, kind of like on the side, I'm doing my own intuitive development. And I came across numerology. And I'll never forget the first day I had this reading done. It was like the woman said to me, she's like, "You're sensitive, aren't you?" And I was like, yeah, I'm kind of working on this. Like, I know, it's a problem. It, causes issues. And she was like, no, your sensitivity is your superpower. And I was like, wait, what? Like, that was a paradigm shift for me. It was a mind blown moment. It was one of those things that I will like never come back from. I will never be the same ever after since having that moment. Because what I really realized after diving into this was the thing about me that I had rejected, made wrong, and tried to change about myself was actually a sacred gift. And that by ignoring it and avoiding it and diminishing it, I was rejecting a piece of who I was. And that has massive implications in relationships, goal setting, career, personal fulfillment, like everything, right? And so I secretly, behind the scenes with my business coaching clients, okay, remember, you guys, I'm coaching construction companies, renovation companies, eyeglass retailers. Like these are very normal businesses. There's no woo happening in these businesses, right? But super secret behind the scenes, I would run their numerology codes and I would look at what was happening with the numerology chart. And then we'd be in a conversation around like marketing or managing their teams or whatever. And I would think about their codes in the back of my mind and I would say, oh, have you tried such and such approach? And they would try it and boom, it would work. Right. And so eventually people started saying, like, how are you coming up with this stuff? Like, where is this coming from? I'm like, well, looking at your numerology chart, and I was apologetic about it at first. Like, is this something I'm allowed to do? Is this okay? And it turned into this thing that everyone was like, tell me more. And so I started teaching it, sharing it with others until it became one of the most primary things that I do in my business, right? For many years. Now I do both. I do business coaching and numerology and I work them together. But I have a huge arm of my business where the primary thing I do is teach people how to use numerology to support them in their lives, whether it's growing their business, improving their relationships, improving their family life, understanding their children better, dealing with team dynamics, and really knowing how our energy works and how our energy runs. What this has done for me in my life and in my business, well, first of all, at this point, my business is about 11 years old now. I've helped thousands of people learn to trust their intuition, learn to speak more intuitive languages, whether that's developing different clair senses. We can talk a little bit about that as well, but it's how we interpret energy. I've helped thousands of people now learn tools to do that more effectively. And this is a tool that will serve you no matter what you do in life, to be able to understand the energetics at play, not just what's quote unquote evidence-based, not just the like hard facts and data, but what's underneath them. Oftentimes, the hard facts and the data, that's important. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm still an econ girl at heart, but those can be lagging indicators. And what I mean by that is things happen in the physical realm last, right? They happen in the mental and emotional realm first. So if you can tap into some of those energetic pieces, you have the ability to influence before the physical shows up. Does that make sense? We all have it. We all have intuition, whether we want to admit it or not, or trust it or not, or think it's working for us or not. Even after, teaching intuition to people for years, I have moments where I question mine. That doesn't mean it's not there, right? I have moments where I maybe think I got things wrong. That doesn't mean that I did. Okay. So these are all things I like to talk about with people. I have been, because of my skill in numerology, because of this tool that I've used and developed, it has brought me to be invited to participate in conferences and summits and different events. I've been invited on trips where they paid for my trip because they wanted me to be a guest at their different events, even places where I show up as just like a student or a participant. People will call me out in the crowd and be like, hey, to the resident numerologist in the crowd, what's the energy of today? Or why do we keep seeing, 1, 2, 3? Or, oh, look, it's 11, Megan, what's that mean? Right. And so having a tool that sets you up as an authority in your business, in your life, as someone to be recognized with that skill, right? And some people will say to me, like, do you feel weird sharing this like energetic stuff? Like, is it like, is it weird? Like, does anyone feel that way? Comment in the chat. Does anyone wonder, like, am I allowed to talk about this stuff? Or is like, am I going to be judged? Is this going to be weird? I've had people say, how are you so comfortable talking about these pieces online? Is anyone else felt that before? Or you guys are all good? Like, you're like, nope, I can talk about the weird and the mystical and the magical, and I have no fear around it. Anyone want to share? Yeah. Yeah, totally. They're not my people. Yeah. The craziest thing I've noticed, depends on who I'm talking to, depends on the crowd, depends on the audience, 100%. But the craziest thing I've noticed over the years is just how legitimized It is. And you know what? Like, not to be like humble bragging over here, but part of me is like, it's because of the people who walked ahead of time, who were willing to do it unapologetically. I remember when I first learned tarot, whipping out a deck of tarot cards at a coffee shop. You felt like our eyes on me. Now I whip out my tarot cards anywhere I feel like it. And sometimes people will even be like, "Ooh, can you do me a reading? Can you pull me a card?" Right? Um, Kelowna Now, which is a Kelowna 10, not Kelowna Now, Kelowna 10, which is a Jimmy Pattison Media Group company. So mainstream media has asked me to be their numerology columnist. I've been their columnist now. Their feature, it's not a column, it's because I'm not writing it, it's a speaking thing where they have me speak for a minute on the energy of the month. And I've been doing this for like 2, 3 years now. Every single month, I'm one of their longest standing, most consistent contributors. And this is mainstream media, you guys, right? It's so wonderful. It makes me so happy. I'm like, hey, if the weather forecaster can talk about the weather every month or every day or every week, certainly we can talk about the energy of the numbers to that same frequency because this actually influences us arguably more than the weather does, right? I would say. Thank you. I appreciate that. You guys are so sweet. Okay. So, giving yourself permission to be seen as an authority in your field, numerology is such a grounded metaphysical energy tool that it's practical, it's grounded, it's formula based. It's a great bridging point. If you are someone who's already very comfortable in like playing with the energetic realms, like let's say you do Akashic records or Reiki or other types of energy work or healing work, that's comfortable and normal for you, which is great. But if you sometimes feel like it's hard to explain the transition into like something grounded, clients don't always get it. I don't know how to articulate it. This is where numerology can come in and be the bridge, right? I do Reiki, I don't advertise, and I should. Yes, right? You should if you feel that it's going to help people recognize the outcome that they need, right? And this is so important when we're thinking about like how we talk about what we do. Is we want to talk about what we do in such a way that our ideal clients, the people who need us, will be like, oh my God, that's me, and lean in, right? And so if sharing some of your energy work gifts or healing gifts is going to open the door for those people to get what they need, that that's the answer right there, is what opens that door. Okay. So let's, are we ready to get into the nitty gritty? You have my Reiki certificate. So this is, okay, I love that this is coming up around energy work and Reiki because um, you can absolutely go and get a reattunement. You can absolutely go and get training with another teacher if you feel like the training didn't stick or something like that. But oftentimes you need a way of articulating something that's nebulous. And this is where I think numerology can be the bridge for from both realms, right? From the energy work that can feel nebulous and ungrounded to people if they don't understand what energy work is. Like I understand what energy work is, and I still have a hard time explaining it sometimes, right? Also, from the people who tend to be very process oriented, it's like they're missing that like magnetism element, which is the energy. So the numerology gets to bridge the gap between both. So we're going to talk a little bit about how and why to do that. So first of all, talk a lot about it. What is numerology? How many of you guys are like are familiar with it to some degree? Let me know in the chat, like familiar to some degree, put a 1. If you're a total expert to numerology, I don't know, put a 10, I guess. Or if you're brand new to numerology and you feel like you're okay, yeah, rate yourself. That's a better way to do it. Rate yourself. A scale of 1 to 10, 10 being expert, 1 being relatively new, right? Familiar. Yeah, haven't studied it. Beautiful. Perfect. Yeah. Okay, good. Let's dive into it. So, what is it? What is numerology? Numerology is just literally using the language of numbers to interpret energy. That's all it is. It's taking numbers and interpreting energy. Tina, I'm sorry, I'm calling you out, woman. You are not midway on the scale. I'm calling you out. You are a professional.
haven't done my advanced with you yet, Megan. Come on, give me some
Okay,
credit here.
happening in 2025. It's happening. Calling this in. Oh my gosh. Okay, I love it. So, yeah, numerology is using numbers to interpret energy. That's all it is. You can interpret energy, in my mind, in three ways. Okay, so number one is understanding our energy, like as a body, as a human, as a soul, understanding why I'm here, why I am the way I am, what are the uniquenesses about me, what makes me special, what sets me apart, and then also like where are my blind spots? Where am I lacking energy or not dominant in certain fields, right? What are the pieces that are not my essence, they're not my nature? And so that's one way of using numbers. The other way of using numbers is what let's call it forecasting. Okay. So it's understanding how energy is going to move through time. This is not independent, like, this is not like specific to me. We're all in universal energy right now, right? We're all in a 2025, which means we are all in the nine energy year. Those of us who are still living in Wednesday are currently in a five energy day. Those of us who are living in the future on Thursday are in a six energy day. So, this is like the universal energy that all of us are living in. The nuance to that comes in, well, is five or six a good or a bad number? That's where the uniqueness of understanding how does my energy relate with those numbers come in and require like interpretation and all of that. But that's the second way you can use it, which is forecasting, understanding how energy moves through time and space. And then the third way, the last way you can use it is the two-way conversation with the universe. And this is kind of like lumped in as like angel numbers, right? So if you're like, oh, I see, 111 or people sometimes have their own patterns. Like I have certain people who say to me, like, I always see 1212. Like, great, that's your pattern. Or I always see 555, right? Or if you have like a lucky number, you know how some people don't have a lucky number. It's like that's that number, like it's always been, I've always liked it, or favorite number. That's my favorite number. I've always liked it ever since I was a kid, or maybe it's like I hear fun, people always tell me stories about numbers, which I love. I get random texts of people sending me like the odometer on their car, being like, look at this number. I love it, or receipts. But those numbers mean something, right? And they mean more than, like more than 111 being like, oh, that means my angels are present or whatever. Like, sure, of course, but your angels are always present. It's not like they just check out and have a lunch break. Like, they're always there. So, yes, they're present. Yes, they might be like validating what you're doing and like trying to tell you that they're validating what they're doing. But you can have a more profound conversation with them if you understand what the numbers mean. You can actually like take it as more of a two-way conversation with the universe, right? Again, whether you're speaking to angels, whether this is like the universe or source, like however you encapsulate that is totally up to you. You can also look at it as purely quantum energy. If you're not like you don't want to go down the magical realm, that's fine. It's up to you. I like to go down the magical realm, but if you're like, I need the quantum physics explanation, Megan, tell me and I will share it with you because they all work together. Interesting how that works, right? It's like, oh, the little metaphors that my brain needs to wrap itself around a concept. And maybe your metaphors are different, but like, they all work. So good. I often find that when people have like favorite numbers, we will find that somewhere in their chart, or we will find it in the chart of somebody significant in their life. So if you're like, oh, a 7 and 2, those are my favorites, right? It's like, okay, that might be somewhere in your chart. There's messages in those numbers for you, and we can sort of dive into that the more we understand, well, what does 7 mean and what does 2 mean? Any questions about uh, what we've talked about so far? The three categories. So, like the person, how energy moves through time, and then the two-way conversation with the universe. Any questions about that so far? Give you a little foundational bit. Okay. what we're going to talk about today, we're going to just look at ruling number for now. Okay. Some of you already know your ruling number. If you know it, pop it in the chat because I'm curious how many people know it. If you don't know it, tell me what your birthday is in the chat and we'll calculate it for you. Okay, I love it. So someone's asking in the chat if they think numerology is too woo-woo, how do you explain it? We're going to talk about that today. Yeah, I'm hoping. Let's check in with you at the end of the call and let's see if you understand it from a more of a quantum physics perspective by the end of the call. Yay, look at this. Okay, 4, 10, 4. Yeah, so what you do to calculate is you take the digits of your day, month, year, and you split them out and you add them all up. I have a formula for you in the worksheet, but like someone popped their birthday in the chat. So you do 3 plus 5, so 8, and then plus 1 is 9, plus 9 is 18, plus 7 is 25, plus 5 is 30, right? So yeah, 30. You take the 3 and the 0, you add those again, and you get 3. Is everybody with me on how the formula works? Okay. I don't look at ones. This comes up pretty much every time I teach numerology. I don't look at ones. Some numerologists do, and that's, within your whatever choice to do that. I look at, when I'm looking at personality, like personal energy, I look at 2 through 11. So if someone thinks they're a 1, in my mind, they're a 10. And the reason I say that is because sure, 1 makes sense when you're looking at like a day or a month or a year, but it doesn't make sense when you're looking at a human who is very complex and is going to live for many decades and have lots of different things happen to them. They are operating as a 10. So when you understand the difference between 1 and 10, it'll make sense to you. Okay. I'm just checking the chat. Okay, awesome. So when you have your ruling number, this is one teeny little aspect of your chart. There's other places we can look for information. You have your grid, which is like a little tic-tac-toe thing. I'm not going to teach it today, but I'm going to kind of give you the high level of what it is. It's a little tic-tac-toe chart that you break all the numbers of your birthday into this tic-tac-toe chart, and it tells you how your energy is distributed. You've also got your day energy, which somebody's mentioning in the chat, right? The day you were born. So like I was born February 5th. So the 5th of February, so 5 is my day energy. So it's just the day digits. That's your personal day energy. Okay. You also have personal year. You have seasons you go through in your life. You have the energy associated with your name. There's lots of different places that we can look at in your chart. There's also like, do you have multiples, right? Like lots of people born in 19 something or other will have multiple 1s in their chart, right? Like if you were born on November 10th, you for sure have 3 1s. If you were born on November 10th, 1982, you have 4 1s, right? Because there's the 2 1s from November, there's the 1 from the day, and there's the 1 from the year. I don't want to get into the nuance of all of that because I don't want to lose you guys, but recognize that if that's what you want to understand, we're going to give you pathways to make sense of those specific nuanced details going forward. For now, what I want us to do is recognize that we can start somewhere with one piece of information, and there is a lot of gold we can dig in around this, okay? So your ruling number is kind of like your sun sign in the zodiac, right? It's like, this is like one key piece of information. A lot of people who don't know much about numerology could remember it. It's going to stick in your mind, and it's a great place to start. Within every single number, there is polarity. There is challenge and opportunity. There is the quote unquote good and the quote unquote bad. And I say that in air quotes because there is no such thing as a good or a bad number. There is just how that number is being expressed, insecurely or securely. Okay. It's kind of like looking at like a battery. Okay. If you look at a battery, there's the positive side and there's the negative side. You can't just take the negative side off and think it's going to work. It's not how that works. You need both, right? However, if like you're the battery okay, I'm going to mix this metaphor up really badly and probably lose you. But like if we're the battery and we're like, okay, well, the battery does have a negative side, but I'm going to pretend the negative side doesn't work, doesn't exist. Like the battery's not going to function properly. Okay. It's not going to make sense. It's not going to work. One of the most powerful things about numerology is recognizing where those insecure expressions lie in our chart. So starting with our ruling number, because that's the easiest place to start, where those insecure expressions lie and what is your relationship with them. This is where people can go into shadow work to understand what's been avoided, what's been repressed, what's been made wrong about them, what's been made bad about them. Where do they probably have some level of trauma around, right? And big T or little t, right? Like simple things that you have experienced in your life where you have been maybe shamed, made wrong because your brain or your energy body works more this way and less this way. Okay. So let me just refer back to my story about being sensitive. Okay. I have an extreme sensitivity in my chart, and a skilled numerologist could pick it up in a second, not even skilled. Like you would literally need 2 days of numerology training and you would be like, that's pretty clear and obvious. However, that was a trait within me that my early caregivers and family didn't like. So I didn't receive love and acceptance and validation for it. This is where shadows come from. Okay. I'm giving you guys like a little shadow lesson 101, right? So, as a child, as an adult, if there's a part of you that the people you love don't like or don't accept about you, what do? We morph, we adjust, we be something different. We try to make ourselves more likable, more acceptable, right? Especially if this is something that you noticed like in school age, like from 0 to like teenagehood, let's say, but really from like 0 to 6, okay? If there were pieces that you would express that didn't get you like and approval, what do? Your survival depends on like and approval. So you tweak, right? You adjust. But because you're in that state of like that brainwave state that children are in is the same state that we're in when we meditate, and is the same state where our brain is super plastic, super moldable, you can become that, right? You can become that, and your brain will mold to that. It doesn't mean it's what your soul was longing to experience. So then you go through life and you wake up, usually like in your 30s or 40s or whatever, and you're like, wait, why don't I love this about my life? Why don't I love this about myself? Or why have I been feeling guilty about this part of myself for so long? Or like this part of myself is a problem. Like I felt my sensitivity was a problem, right? And it's like, hold on, wait a second. Maybe this is like actually a message from my soul here to take a look at something. Okay. So is this kind of like ringing some bells for you guys around understanding how sometimes the insecure expression can come out messy, right? Or like we might distance ourselves from it. So, in order for you to kind of explore what that might be for you, I would just get really curious and ask yourself, like, what are some of those things about me that I've always viewed as like wrong or problems or have needed to fix, right? I'll give some more examples for myself because sometimes it's hard in a world obsessed with personal development. And I say this knowing I'm kind of in the personal development world, but in a world obsessed with personal development and growth, like it's trendy and normal and whatever to be like, I'm fixing myself, right? It's like, well, what if you were actually perfectly divinely designed and it's just a matter of like unlearning the programming that got you out of being your truest self? Like, can we just like recognize that the universe does not make mistakes, right? The universe does not make mistakes. So the question is, what about you do you perceive as bad and wrong? Okay. Another one for me, you talk too much. God, you talk too much. Well, I'm a ruling number seven. Sevens and fives are two of the core numbers known as the quote unquote teachers. So if you happen to have seven and five, either in your ruling number or in your day energy or somewhere else dominant in your chart, you probably have some of that energy as well. You can be a teacher and be introverted as well. That doesn't have anything to do with introvert or extrovert, by the way. But like, if you are a seven or a five, I'm going to use five or seven because that's me. I have 5 day energy, by the way, so I have both of them. But as a seven, if I'm around people who are, let's say four, the quiet leaders, right? Or let's say eight, the like going deep levels of mastery, they can look to me and be like, oh my God, you talk too much. Because it's not that those people might not be chatty, they might be, but the way they go about it is going to be very different. The way they express it is very different. And like for me, I internalize that as like your voice should be held back, which you can see how, like, as a teacher energy, there's like some dissonance happening, right? Like, my soul is like, I coded you to be a teacher, and the world around me is like, shh. So I'm like, now what do I do? Right? Like, now what do I do? How do I navigate this? How do I make sense of this? You can think of your energy body, imagine it being a magnet, okay? It's full of electricity, right? This is physics. It's full of electricity, okay? Imagine you had a dial switch to control how strong or weak your magnet was. Okay? Imagine you had, like, you consciously could just be like, I'm going to turn my magnet up to 10 today. Tomorrow, no, I'm going to turn it down to a 5. Okay? You can control that power. Just imagine. If there's a piece of my energy body that wants to be expressed as a teacher, and I am like biting the tongue, holding back, what do you think is happening to the magnetic field within me? Like, I am like contracting. I am like shrinking. I am like holding my breath. I have taken that dial and I have turned it down. I have lowered that magnetism. Can you guys feel what I'm talking about? And it's not because talking and teaching are bad. It's not because sensitivity is bad. It's not because questioning authority is bad. It's not because you're creative with too many ideas is bad. There's nothing good or bad about any trait you might perceive as wrong in yourself, right? The overthinkers out there, the perfectionists out there, like, if you guys give me some of your stories of like, this is the part about me that's broken and wrong, I guarantee you that's an insecure expression. That's it. It is not bad and it is not wrong. Okay, so insert yourself in my story for a second. How old was I when I got that reading? I was 33. So you spent 33 years of your life. Oh, that's funny. I never thought about it being as a 33 master number. Tina will appreciate this. I was 33 when this happened, and I'd spent 33 years of my life being like, don't be so sensitive, toughen up, don't be so emotional, right? And then now I have this numerology person who I trust. And when she said it, the level of truth I felt and resonance I felt washed over me. I was like, this is accurate. So now I'm 33 and I'm like, okay, I'm going to go out there and be sensitive now and like embrace my sensitivity. What do you think happened? Like, I tripped many times. I fell and stumbled many times. And this is what I see happening when people do this kind of work with themselves is it's like, oh, you're sensitive, go be sensitive. So you go be sensitive, and like the first time you kind of mess it up. And then you're like, see, I knew it. I wasn't supposed to be sensitive. I am broken. I am wrong. This is bad. I'm going to go back to the way I was always told I should be. Instead of being like, wait a second, this is a skill I have had insecure expression around for 33 years. It might take a minute. It might take a minute to find my anchor, to find my footing. I might mess it up. And I accept that. This is where I love the EFTers in the group, right? I'm going to stumble on this issue, but I love and accept myself anyways. I might get it wrong. I might get it messy. It's okay. I love and accept myself anyways. That's one of the EFT setup statements that I love. And I think numerology and EFT go really well together for that. But with any healing modality, right? Because if, like, I'm sure any of you guys in the room who have healing modalities, you're hearing like, if I was your client, right? How would you have supported me through that? Those doubts, those stumbles, those falls. Like, oh, Megan, you need some nervous system work. Oh, Megan, you need some integration with some healing, right? Like, do you see how some of these things can be woven in to help those transitions, right? So, okay, here we are. We see the challenge side, we see the gift side, or we see the insecure and the secure expression of it. It did wake up the creative side, Tina. Yes, I'm like, oh, yeah, creativity. So good. But we have these in many different areas of our chart, right? And every single piece that a client is experiencing, self-doubt, a blind spot, a limiting belief, an upper limit, a self-sabotage, a circling of these old stories, when you look at their chart, chances are, I feel like I can guarantee this at this point because it's never happened otherwise. I'm open to the challenge. Chances are, when you see the story, you can trace it back to an element within their chart of like, oh, it's because you're operating in the insecure expression of this number. So, like, let's explore that. Like, are you open to recognizing that maybe your sensitivity isn't a problem? Maybe it's a gift. Are you open to recognizing that, your talkativeness is rooted in something that might be of benefit to you? Like, can we explore this? And it opens the door for these coaching conversations because there's this like healthy degree of triangulation happening, right? And and like, tell me what you think about this. But if someone tells me something, I don't like to be told what to do. Like, I'm a rebellious Aquarius, ruling number 7. Like, don't tell me what to do. No, you're wrong, right? But it's like, oh, I see this influence in your chart. Okay. And this is actually a very trauma aware approach. Okay. It's not just the 7s and the Aquarians who don't like being told what to do, right? It's a very trauma aware approach to recognize the power within your client and say to them, hey, I see an influence in your chart. The way I see this influence is it looks like sometimes you get caught up overthinking, but actually you're an incredibly powerful manifester. Let me ask you, how does that feel for you? Does that feel like it could be relevant in your circumstance? Do you notice this coming up in your life? Where have you seen either the insecure expression, whatever that is, like the overthinking things, or the secure expression as being a really strong manifester? And let them either opt in or opt out of it, right? They can be like, yeah, that happens here, that happens there, or nope, doesn't happen to me. And it's funny because you don't want to tell anyone anything. You're not the expert, they are, right? Like, you get to share the information. They get to choose how they opt into it or don't opt into it. But it's so funny because one of my, like, she's an incredible numerologist. She came into numerology with no background or anything of numerology, didn't know anything about it. And when I shared some pieces of her chart, she was like, that's not me at all. Like, not at all. And then she texted me 2 days later and she's like, I was out jogging in the forest and I literally had to sit down because I felt like I got hit by a bolt of lightning of truth. It's like, I'm sorry, you're welcome. I don't know what to say. She's since completely changed her career, quit her corporate job, and has a full-time numerology business where she's incredibly busy and incredibly successful and has, like, months-long waits to get in. And yeah, anyways, the point being, it's never really happened to me where someone's like, that's literally not me. Oftentimes, obviously, people might not, like, numerology is not everybody's jam, and that's fair. But this is the cool thing about being open about your magic is in your marketing and in your communications is then people get filtered, right? In a good way. It's like, well, if you aren't here to talk about the magic, you probably don't want to work with me. So it's a good thing I share that in my marketing messaging. Otherwise, you might come and then might be like, oh my God, I got tricked into listening to some chick talk about magic, right? Like, wouldn't be here. So, okay, that was a little side note. Dialing up and dialing down your magnet. Shadows, the very nature of shadows is that we distance or repress ourselves from pieces of our essence, pieces of our nature. That is the essence of a shadow. And then what happens is it comes up in ugly and messy ways in life. It sabotages relationships, it sabotages finance, it sabotages, advancements in your career or goal setting or health, right? Because something will trigger you and you won't know how to navigate it, you won't know how to deal with it, and your whatever the shadow is, the repressed energy is, comes out in ugly, messy ways, right? Until we learn to honor it, accept it, embrace it. I think most shadow work, though, is like revel in it, whatever it is, like revel in your insensitivity or revel in your overthinking, like accept that about yourself and just love it. And it's like, as long as I judge overthinking as a bad thing, how the heck am I going to love it? You're asking me to love a bad thing about myself? But this is where I love numerology as the bridge, because overthinking is on the band of polarity, but that's the insecure expression. What else is true about that energy band? And once I understand where the gift lies in that, it changes everything. Because then I can truly love it. I can see how it's an asset. I can see how it's a gift versus judging it. And it will continue to come up and sabotage me. Make sense? Okay. Yeah. And oftentimes, oftentimes you'll notice this in your own life or in your client's life, those shadow things that come out that cause us to shrink, cause us to contract, create upper limits, whatever, sabotage, they're not conscious. We don't realize we're doing it until we let ourselves sit in acceptance of whatever that looks like, of doing the work, of recognizing the trigger, of journaling on it, right? Once we bring in that level of awareness, then it can come into our conscious mind. Sometimes the cool thing about numerology, though, is it's like you can bring that into their awareness by being like, here's the pieces that I see in your chart. Here's how they express the insecure and the secure. You tell me, is this something that you've noticed in your life? Right? And then now the client or yourself, if you're doing the reading for yourself, we're like, okay, let me dig through this and let me like dig through my memory bank and see, oh, kind of reminds me of this when I did this in a relationship and it went sideways. Let me explore that, right? And so it's bringing it up to be for our awareness. Okay, so all of you guys know your ruling numbers at this point. Should we do something a little fun with it? You guys ready to actually like play with the numbers now? I feel like I gave a lot of backstory. Was that a helpful backstory? Do you guys feel like this is stuff you can work with now? Is it giving new insight into the like shadow sabotage? I hate the word sabotage. I'm going to use it, but I hate it. It's like if I knew it, I wouldn't do it. I'm not doing it on purpose. Like, nobody is. Nobody is trying to hurt themselves, right? We just don't know yet. Okay. So once you know your ruling number, hopefully you guys all got access to the workbook. So there's the formula. If you're a numerology math nerd like me, you will promptly get the birthdays of your kids, your mom and dad, your sisters, your BFF, your ex, all these things, and you'll be like, okay, let me figure out who they are. What's going on here? Okay, so your codes. So under here, I've labeled these as the blocks and barriers. So these are what we've also been talking about as like the insecure expression or what would cause your magnet to be dialed down? Okay, so you'll want to peek under your numbers. I can't remember what numbers we had, and now I can't see the chat. Let me see if I can pull up the chat. Okay, I know we've got some fours, so I'll scroll down to the four. We've got a three here as well. And for those of you who are like, oh, I have a favorite number of this, you can look at these definitions anywhere. Like if it's like, oh, it's a favorite number or it's a number I see on the clock or, whatever, look it up. Like this is the thing about when you understand the language of numbers. The positioning of the number matters for interpretation, but the number is a number is a number. A three, whether you're seeing it in someone's personal chart, like their birth chart, or you're seeing it is a year energy or a month energy or a day energy, like a three is a three is a three. It's always going to have certain characteristics that are the same no matter where it stands, right? Okay, so the threes and the fours in the room, I'd love to hear from you. Scroll through. Are there any pieces in here that you are like, yeah, I can see that might be an aspect of an insecure expression for me or part of a shadow for me, or, like when I'm dysregulated, when I'm stressed about money, or when the kids won't stop interrupting me, or like whatever, right? Whatever it is. Yeah, Natalie, Canadians do that too, day, month, year. And then people in the US, I think, typically do month, day, year. It doesn't matter the order for the math. But I will say that there is calculations, the order does matter. So when we dive deeper into other places in the chart, you always want to be very clear with your clients. So that's why I usually ask people to like write the month so that I don't get confused. Because it's happened before where I thought they were writing to me in one format and they wrote to me in another, and it changes certain ways of interpreting. It doesn't change this piece though. Okay, so some people are seeing it. Yes, absolutely. Wonderful. Okay. I know we've got a few more. So what I encourage you to do, figure out which one resonates with you and pick one little part. You're like, oh, um, I have insecurity around expressing my feelings. That's the piece I'm going to focus on. Or I definitely feel like this burden energy. That's the piece I'm going to focus on. So just pick one little piece. Don't pick the whole thing. Like, let's not get overwhelmed here. Pick one piece. And I'm going to scroll. Okay, we've got a six. I think we have a five in here too, don't we? When you've got the piece picked out, that's like, oh, this is a shadow that I'm willing to kind of explore or get curious about today. Because the next piece I'm going to teach you is something you can really use to find your source of power, which to me is the same thing as like dialing up the, what are we calling it? Dialing up the, I was going to say temperature, but I didn't say temperature. Dialing up the power of your magnet. That's what I said. Dialing up the power of your magnet. I'm a seven. Definitely sitting in the unknown is really hard on me. Really hard on me. Like I want answers. Is there anybody who doesn't have their little bit picked out yet? Some of you have your own workbooks open, so I just want to make sure everybody, okay, everybody, if you have your work, like your little section that you're going to work on picked out, the insecure expression you're going to work on, I want you to write that down, and I'm going to give you the next step. Okay. I think we had an 11 too, right? And Shelley, had you figured out what piece you wanted to kind of focus on with the nine? Okay, beautiful. Yeah, beautiful. Okay, so once you figured it out, there actually is a place to write it down. I did give you guys some journaling prompts, which You can explore on your own time to like deepen your understanding around your ruling number, but we're not gonna look at that just yet. The next piece I want you to do is I want you to go to how to turn on your magnet. So these are the like the secure expression or the gifts or the strengths or the superpowers, your purpose. These are like the opportunities that you have with your number. You know, we've got threes and fours in here. I called for a quiet leader earlier. That is definitely part of the four. Threes are very like natural manifestors, very good providers. I think we've got some six in here. Six is all about harmony and balance and love. Yes, abundant flow. Absolutely. Okay, so once you have, oh, there's the nine because somebody needed the nine, I think. Nines are all about the high standards. Okay, once you have, does everyone have the thing they're working on? Like, sorry. So one little phrase out of the challenge and one little phrase out of the opportunity. Do we all have that? Then I want you to write them in these little boxes or just on your page, the challenge and the opportunity. And then we're going to make a little mantra for you to work with. And this is, I mentioned that the purpose of today's call was to understand alchemy, transformation, or transmutation. What is the difference between transformation and transmutation? I just really like thinking of the term transmutation because to me, it has a level of you can't unknow it. You can't unbecome it. It's an identity change at the cellular level that once you've moved through it, there is no going back. There is no going back for me to being that like person who judged my sensitivity. There is no going back for me of the person who, would hold back and bite my tongue when I know part of my gift is being the teacher, right? It's like even if I were to like ignore all my like healthy habits and routines, I still wouldn't unlearn that. It's still in my bones, right? So to me, that's where transmutation comes from. Someone asked me today, Megan, I don't even know what alchemy means. Okay, let me explain what alchemy means. The term alchemy comes from this like metaphysical concept of turning lead into gold. The alchemists of, myth and legend, whether it's true or not, I don't know, would turn lead into gold, right? So there's again this energy of like transmuting something from something lower quality or lower use to something of higher quality or of higher use or of higher value. When we are able to understand that polarity energy of the insecure expression and recognize the opportunity that's being birthed because of it, this is when we create that alchemy within ourselves, where we activate a level of power in our cellular body, like improving that like magnetism through the electricity in our body. But also, I mean, they're probably related. I don't know. I'm not like a biology physicist person that could tell you the exact science around it. But when you own who you are, perceive shortcomings and all, and recognize and honor the gifts that you carry, you stand a little taller. You command more authority in the room. You're not going to hide. You're not going to turn down your volume. You trust and own that. And sure, you might have days where you're like tired or you're off or you're not feeling it or whatever. but that power is there at all times. And this is why I've ended up taking the terminology alchemy and really incorporating it into my brand. But I feel like it's something we can all do when we understand what the numbers are telling you, right? So it's like, if the number is telling me that my sensitivity is a gift, and meanwhile, I'm trying to duck and hide from it, I now get to choose. Am I going to choose to work with that? In which case, I will create alchemy in my being, or am I just going to keep hiding from it? Either way, it's fully fine. But chances are, if your client's coming to you with these questions, or if you're coming to yourself with these kinds of questions, you are doing that because you're like, I'm ready for something to be different. I don't want it to be surface level. I don't want to just make like affirmations. I'm not knocking affirmations. They can be a great tool combined with something. But if I didn't realize the gift in my insensitivity, I could say all day that insensitivity or what my sensitivity is good. I wouldn't believe it. So what'd be the point? There's no point in saying affirmations that you're not aligned with. It's not doing anything, right? I mean, if that was the case, anybody who watched one of those, like, I don't know, crime podcasts would become a criminal or something. Like, it doesn't work that way. There has to be believability there. You have to align with the statements. Okay, so if they don't flow with each other, do it anyways and give yourself a day or two to see how it lands, right? Give yourself a day or two to see how it lands, because even if you've picked out two things, like the insecure and the secure thing, that seem different, they're still on the same band of energy. They're still operating at the same frequency. So let's say, for example, if you, instead of looking at it as numbers, you can look at it as colors in a rainbow, right? So you've got like red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple, mauve. Okay, well, if I'm picking up yellow, I could pick the yellow that's like closer to the, green or orange or whatever, but it's yellow, right? So yes, there's flavors of that, but like just play with it for a week or two, however long you want. Play with it for a few days though, and see how it starts to land as you play with your mantra. So the mantra is, as a ruling number, 7 or whatever yours is, I practice grace, and you can change the wording up to fit for you, but this is how I've worded it for me. I practice grace when I experience being stuck in the unknown. Or I practice grace when I experience being unable to move forward, right? Whatever the challenge is. And I lean into my natural gift of my connection with my intuition, my ability to navigate the unknown, whatever it is. Okay. So hopefully you guys all have a statement. Does anyone not have a statement at this point? Because I really want, my goal for today's call is that you all have a statement that you can write out, put it on a little cue card or a little post-it note, stick it on your mirror or wherever you've handy, and just sit with it for the night up until tomorrow's call. Like just sit with it, say it to yourself a couple times, and have some like reflection around it. Okay. Journal on it. Think about circumstances in your life where like, oh, this became relevant. And yeah, just get curious. Is everyone going to accept my homework assignment? Play with it? Okay. Tomorrow's call, we're going to go more deeply in how we use this information to help, whether it's ourselves or our clients, move through stuff. Whether it's they're not able to get out of sabotage, they're hitting an upper limit, they're repeating patterns and they're not able to get out of it, whatever that is, or they have a goal they want and they can't seem to achieve it. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how you can use this as part of like a coaching, healing, personal growth, whatever, right? And it can be personal. Like, I mean, you hear that stuff and you might think, oh, that sounds like life coaching. It can be for sure life coaching, but it can also be like, I have people who are financial planners. They can't do the numerology in front of their clients for licensing reasons, but they can know the numerology before they go into a meeting. And they can know where that person's deepest fears lie and where their greatest dreams lie. And they can speak a language that will resonate as truth with their client so that that client feels seen, heard, met, and understood, right? So even if you're like, I don't know, like, is this something I will be doing like up front? I don't need to lead with it. Like I didn't lead with it with the guys I was working with in construction. That it didn't feel right to me. But yet they benefited so much that they were some of the people who were like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Numerology." Right? And they were like, "Cool." I'm like, "Yeah, I know. Do you want to learn?" They're like, "No, but you can keep doing it." I'm like, "Okay, cool." Yeah. Yay, I love hearing yours. Oh, so cool. As a ruling three, I practice grace and I experience what I perceive as others' shortcomings, and I lean into my natural gift of people feeling cared for in my presence. Oh my God. That makes me so happy. I love it. Okay, here's what I want to know from you. Two things. Number one, are you going to come on the call tomorrow? And number two, what was the takeaway you got from today's call? What was like, oh, I needed to hear that. That's the thing that stuck out. If you have to hop off, that's totally fine. I'll send the replays out. But if you want to unmute, if you want to ask me questions, if you want to share, verbalize one of your learnings, I would love to hear it. Numerology is the bridge. Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you. I'm so glad you're going to be here tomorrow. Makes it a lot more fun when people come to your calls, you know? I could talk about numerology all day, but it's more fun if there's people with me while I do. Numerology is the bridge. So
I'll
good.
be here tomorrow, but I might have to leave.
All good. Thank you. And yeah, feel free to come and go as you need to. I know that this is they're in the middle of people's day sometimes. Mm-hmm. So good.
Is it going to be the same time?
Same time. Yeah. Yeah. Numerology just makes me feel so validated, right? Making a new mantra was what I needed to do. Learning that our shadows are just repressed energy. Yeah. If your birthday is the third and your ruling number is a three, three is going to be very strong for you. Yeah. And so when we have multiple numbers show up in multiple positions, that is a strong influence in our life, which means it's a strength when we're working with it. It can also be a challenge depending on kind of where we're at with it, right? And different charts have different, some charts are more balanced in their energy, and that's the energy that person has, that their soul has chosen to embody. And some people's charts are more like extreme in one area, and it's like that's just how their energy wanted to experience this life, right? Yeah. And I guess like for the person who asked earlier, how do you explain this for people who aren't into the woo? I wouldn't say that part about this is how the person wanted to experience this life. I wouldn't say that because that person might not believe in, past lives or parallel universes or any of those rabbit holes that we could go down. But I would say, you know, three contains the energy of insecure expression, secure expression. Do you notice that showing up anywhere in your life? And I just find that if someone's coming to me and asking questions, the best thing I can do is not defend my position, but to just ask them, you know? And this has really helped me. Like I did a period of time, I don't even know, this was probably 8 years ago, where I did markets in the fall. And for those of you who've ever done markets, you get all types, right? So you get people who are like super into it and all over it, and you get the skeptics. And I must have done, I don't know, 4 or 5 markets over a period of like 2 or 3 months. And so I was doing like 7 to 15 numerology readings a day. Man, did I ever learn a lot in that period of time. It was mind blowing and so powerful. But I had one guy who like circled my table for like half an hour, kind of coming up and then walking away, kind of coming up and walking away. And eventually he comes over, he's like, I don't believe in this. I'm like, okay, like fair enough, right? Like, I'm trying to, well, how does it work? So I was like, well, numbers contain energy, right? Numbers are a way of articulating energy. Like, do you have a favorite number? Is that something you've ever noticed before? Well, yeah, but like, okay, and I just let him ask questions and then I answered them. And eventually he booked a reading. He was like, that was really cool. I'm like, you're welcome. But I guess, I come from the standpoint, if someone, I choose the position that makes sense to me, that follows my truth, my authenticity. And um, I don't, nobody else's position's right or wrong, but this is how I like to do it. And I don't need to like defend or protect it. But like, if I'm curious and ask them questions and they're curious, there can often be this really interesting and beautiful exchange of understanding. And so that's one of the reasons I love numerology too, because I mean, if you've ever had your Myers-Briggs done, has anyone had their Myers-Briggs done, their MBTI? And then you get this thing of like, well, I wish I was a T, not an F, or I wish I was an E, not an I. And there's like this judging involved of like what's like, oh, if you have this, then you're CEO energy. And if you have this, then you're I don't even know. It's been so many years since I've had mine done. But I worked with a colleague when I was in Alberta government, and he refused to do any personality typings because he was like, I'm not letting anyone put me in a box. I'm like, fair enough. Like, I wouldn't want to be like typecast that way either. But the thing about, numerology that I love so much is there is no good or bad. It's only good or bad if like someone judges talkers or someone judges structure or someone judges flow or someone judges processing mentally versus processing emotionally, right? And we can see how that would be like judging the red color in a rainbow. Like you can judge red all you want, but you have to admit a rainbow would be pretty ugly if you didn't have red. Like it's needed. And so each color is the same as each number. It has an expression to it. And, like it or not, like it's what makes up this dynamic pattern that we live in. And to me, like I think of it is that way, right? Just like each year is comprised of a bunch of numbers. As people, we are all comprised of a bunch of numbers. And if every number was similar, it would be pretty monochromatic and boring, right? Yeah. Hmm. Love it, love it, love it. Anyone have any questions for me? You are so welcome. Thank you for being here. The magnet of the negative and the positive. I love hearing what you guys learn. Yeah, creating a new mantra was needed. Reconfirms your word of the year and your personal year. I am loving moving from the shadow to the mastery. This is another thing that I can sometimes get a little fired up on. Is how much the world profits from our own self-doubt, right? The more I think there's something wrong with me, the more likely I am to buy shit to feel better, right? Like the more broken I am, the more I'm going to pay to try to fix myself. And so, like asking ourselves the question if, you know, believing this or reading that or exposing myself to this makes me feel wrong, bad, small. It's like, okay, who's profiting from this? Who's profiting from this, what I'm believing right now? Because if you can tie it to money, then you can start to really be like, okay, let me just like sit and see if this feels true and right to me, or if it's just somebody's profiting from my insecurity. So they're like leveraging that, and it might not be true, right? And I'm not saying it happens all the time, but it does happen. So just kind of knowing that and can be really helpful in us reclaiming our power and choosing mindfully versus choosing from a place of not enough, right? This can be done for events, 100%. So you're asking about the fires in California. I have never run the numbers of a fire. There's been devastating fires here where I live as well. For those of you who are international, I don't know if you know about the fires in Canada, but similar to what happened in California, we had thousands of houses burned down here. Maybe not as many because California is obviously a lot bigger than British Columbia population wise, but I never did numbers for fires. I have done numbers for moves, for weddings, for divorces, for signing business contracts. I actually get people all the time ask me, when's the best time to sign a lease, a contract, or an agreement, right? And just like any number, there is no good or bad days, but the day you sign or make these decisions will influence the outcome of that arrangement. So if you want that arrangement to have a certain feel or a certain vibe to it, choosing mindfully when you sign it can have an impact, right? or retroactively being like, what was the date of this? And let me see if by looking at that date, I can make sense of what's happening, right? And oftentimes you can get, answers. And we're going to talk more about this on another call. But since it came up, I just want to say, like, when you run these formulas, the formulas give you a structure. Your intuition is going to fill in the lines, right? Your intuition fills in the lines. It'd be like looking at the blueprints of a house, right? Looking at the like architectural drawings of something. That's the formula. The architectural drawings will not tell you how it feels to live in that house. They won't, right? That's where your intuition comes in. That's why, yeah, I create an AI tool because it's so awesome and so handy, but I use it with my intuition to color in the lines, right? And that's why even though you can do this mathematically on websites where they'll like give you spit outs of like, oh, your year is going to look like this because you're this, right? Sure. I'm not saying that that's like unhelpful. It might be helpful, but recognize the actual power of what's available comes from your intuition interpreting that. You have to think of that as the architectural drawing or the blueprint. So going back to the fires, if someone got married on that date and you were interpreting it for their wedding date versus a fire happened on that date and you're interpreting it for the fire, your intuition is drawing from the collective field to color in that architectural blueprint to understand the why behind it. So the questions matter that the client's asking or that you're asking, the context matters. So, like someone just throwing out a date, sure, I can like give generic energy around it. But if someone's like, is this a good day to sign a contract on my new house? I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby, my man and I were moving in together and we have to sign a contract. Is this a good date? Versus if someone's like, a fire, right? The question, the context is different. And so when you have the framework and you let your intuition color in the lines, that's when you actually get the richness of information that's useful for both yourself and your client. Yeah. So for any date that you want to calculate, you add it up just like it was a birthday. Yeah. So fun. Okay. I don't want to keep you guys too long. Thank you for sticking around with me. Play your bingo cards. We'll come back and talk about those again and do some prizes tomorrow. If you have any questions whatsoever, DM me on Instagram, send me an email, and we'll see you same time, same place tomorrow. Thanks, everyone. Mwah. Bye.